My name is Sehreen Noor All, and I graduated from GPISH in 2006, so I was in the London program from 2003 to 2005, and then went to Harvard from 2005 to 2006. My background before I joined GPISH was I was an undergraduate at Brown University, and I was studying development studies. So I came to the IAS because I thought I would get a background in the sociology, anthropology, and history of Muslim countries, which I had hoped would help give me the local context for where I wanted to work eventually. And I wanted to actually do development work in Muslim majority countries and thought that the context that the IAS would give me would be helpful for that work. In 2009, I was appointed to be part of the State Department's core team that was charged with executing President Obama's vision for Muslim engagement. So in June 2009, President Obama made a speech in Cairo, and that reset the relationship with Muslim majority countries. And so because I was in one of the very few programmatic arms of the State Department that had the funds to actually do exchange programs or work with youth, we had to design the initiatives that would actually carry out his vision because the White House didn't have a budget. So I actually worked very closely with the White House. I traveled with them on a scoping trip that they did to the Middle East, to the Gulf countries and North Africa. And from there we actually decided what would be our 4 to 5 main priorities. So science and technology, youth exchange programs. And I came back and we actually started designing those programs. So some of the flagship things that we did, which has carried on, is we put on the first Global Summit on Entrepreneurship, which was in DC, which is still continuing, and I believe this year is actually going to be in Istanbul. We also, one of the things I actually really liked about that position was that I was able to invite more people to the policy table, which I thought was really important in terms of nuanced perspectives. I think it's really hard to understand such a dynamic entity as Islam, especially from a foreign policy perspective. And so being able to bring in multiple dimensions to people I knew in the American Muslim space, or other Smileys, or people who just happened to be Muslim but were great entrepreneurs, for example, or doctors, was an important part of my job. And I think what the IIS gave me the ability to do was actually understand how to help other people understand what Islam is and isn't. It's such a dynamic, moving, it's not an entity, it's not an animate object, it doesn't speak, and so being able to take those principles that we learned and hopefully share it back with my colleagues was pretty awesome. First, my father worked in the AKDN, so it was sort of not very surprising that I would want to do development work in Muslim majority countries. So when I came to IIS, I had that in mind, and that's why I pursued a degree in education policy, because I was really focused on education. I knew going into the IIS program that I did not want to stay in academia. So what the IIS program was able to give me was a really strong rooting in scholarship and the ability to talk about it to people who were in policy circles. And so when I was looking for a job after I finished my third year, I went into the government, into the State Department. And so what the program helped me do was be able to articulate something very rationally, be able to back it up with evidence and research, but also help to make impact on the people who were reading it so that I could influence their thoughts about Islam or who might be good speakers on Islam, basically. I think one of the things that sticks with me most about the IAS, especially now that I work in the tech industry, which is as opposite as you can get from what we studied, was the professors that we had at IAS really forced us to think. I think I failed my first class at the IAS, which was humbling and very frustrating, but it tested me a lot. I had a professor who really wanted more out of me, and we had those tense moments, and I come out really feeling like he impacted my life. He just made me think. He made me think really, really hard. And that ability to actually, you think you have critical thinking skills and then someone tests you and you're like, I have to go so much deeper. And I think that the IIS made me go deeper, and that's definitely impacted everything that I do. One of my favorite parts about the IAS program was the fact that all of my other classmates were from different countries. And so I was actually the only American, and I was the only American during the Bush administration, and I was living in England. So that in and of itself was an interesting experience to see how people perceived where I was from, and it gave me a really good opportunity to be able to learn how to articulate myself and distinguish what ended up being a huge part of my career, which was how do you talk about foreign policy. But in more fun terms, I guess, you know, the 10 of us traveled to Morocco together. We did our field research together, and the perspectives that they brought from their countries was so important. And it really opened up my eyes to how all of us need to be engaging on the same level, and that we can engage on academic terms and personal terms.